He said don't tell Dad, but I had to know why. Please subscribe to BlindsThoughts and press the bell icon so you never miss our next story. When people talk about family, they make it sound simple. They talk about blood and love, about unshakable bonds and shared memories that define who you are. But what they never tell you is that sometimes love can grow in places it shouldn't. That sometimes the heart doesn't recognize family lines. It only recognizes warmth, connection, and the way someone makes you feel seen when no one else does. My name is Lauren Hayes, and this is the story of the moment that changed how I saw everything. My family, my heart, and myself. It began the summer my mother remarried. I was 31, freshly out of a long-term relationship that had left me feeling empty. I'd come home to help her prepare for her wedding, hoping that staying busy would distract me from my own heartbreak. Mom's new husband, Richard Lawson, was kind and gentle, a man who made her laugh in ways I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. I wanted to be happy for her. Truly I did. But I wasn't prepared for Evan Lawson, Richard's son from his first marriage. He was 28, quiet, with a gaze that seemed to read people before they spoke. When I first met him at the rehearsal dinner, he shook my hand and said, "So you're Lauren, the famous daughter I've heard so much about." His tone was teasing, light, but his eyes lingered in a way that made my stomach tighten. I laughed it off, pretending not to notice. But something inside me stirred that I didn't want to admit. Over the next few days, we were thrown together constantly. Wedding errands, family dinners, last-minute decorations. He was thoughtful, funny in a subtle way, the kind of person who didn't talk much but always noticed everything. He'd hand me a glass of water before I realized I was thirsty, or move a chair so I wouldn't bump into it. Small things, but things that made me feel seen. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs to the kitchen, barefoot in one of Mom's oversized shirts. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Then I heard it, soft footsteps behind me. I turned and saw Evan, shirtless, with a towel slung over his shoulder, fresh from a shower. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, voice low, almost a whisper. I shook my head. Too much noise in my brain. He leaned against the counter, smirking. "Yeah, tomorrow's a big day." Something in the air shifted between us. I could feel it. The hum of the refrigerator, the quiet of the house. It all seemed to fade until there was only us. For a moment, it felt like I'd stepped out of time. He opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of orange juice, and poured 2 glasses. "You always this restless, Lauren?" he asked, sliding one toward me. "Only when I'm trying not to think," I said softly. He smiled faintly. "Maybe you shouldn't fight it. Sometimes thinking leads to answers." I met his eyes, and for the first time I couldn't look away. There was something there, something dangerous, something kindred. Before I could respond, he leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "Don't tell Dad I'm still awake," he said, almost playfully. But his eyes held a seriousness that didn't match his tone. "He thinks I'm the perfect son." I raised a brow. "And you're not." He chuckled softly, then looked down. "Let's just say, I have my own ways of disappointing people." Something about the sadness in his voice hit me deep. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. Instead, I watched as he walked out of the kitchen, the faint scent of soap and cedar lingering behind him. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything began to shift. After the wedding, Mom and Richard left for their honeymoon, leaving the house quiet and strangely hollow. Evan was supposed to return to Chicago for work, but he stayed another week. "To make sure everything's settled," he said. I told myself it didn't matter, that his presence didn't affect me. But every time he walked into a room, my heart betrayed me. One evening, rain poured outside as thunder rolled through the sky. I was reading in the living room when the lights flickered and went out. The storm had killed the power. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight, and just as I found it, a voice came from behind me. "Power's out," Evan said, holding a candle. The flame illuminated his face, soft and warm. "Guess it's just us." We sat together in the living room, the candlelight dancing between us. The conversation drifted from small talk to deeper things. Fears, regrets, dreams. He told me about his failed engagement, how it ended when he realized his fiancée only loved the idea of him, not who he really was. I told him about the man I'd been with for 6 years who couldn't love me enough to stay. There was silence for a long moment after that. Then he said quietly, "It's strange, isn't it? How the people we think we know can make us feel like strangers." His words sank into me like rain soaking into dry earth. "I think," I whispered, "we just want someone to really see us." He looked at me for a long time. "I see you, Lauren." My breath caught. His voice was soft but heavy, filled with a meaning that made the room suddenly smaller. The candle flickered, and the shadows on the wall seemed to close in. I told myself to move, to say something, anything, but I couldn't. My heart was loud, my hands trembling slightly. He reached over, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. It was such a small gesture, but it felt intimate in a way that made my skin warm. His fingers lingered for a second too long, and then he pulled back, his jaw tense. "Sorry," he murmured. "I shouldn't have." "It's okay," I interrupted, my voice barely audible. "You didn't do anything wrong." But we both knew that wasn't true. From that night on, something unspoken grew between us. We didn't talk about it. We didn't have to. It was there in every glance, every quiet moment when we passed each other in the hallway. It was thrilling and terrifying all at once. Then one afternoon I found him outside, sitting by the old oak tree in the backyard, staring at something in his hand. When he saw me, he quickly hid it in his pocket. "What's that?" I asked, curious. "Nothing," he said too quickly. "Just something personal." I crossed my arms. "You're a terrible liar." He sighed, then pulled it out, a photograph. A young woman smiling. Her name was Claire, my mom's friend's daughter. We dated for years. "She's the one I was going to marry." "She's beautiful," I said softly. He nodded. "Yeah, but she didn't want this life. Family expectations, my father's pressure. She left, and I never really blamed her." There was something raw in his voice. Without thinking, I sat beside him. "You deserve more than that." He looked at me then, and there was something in his eyes that made me forget to breathe. "Sometimes," he said, "I think the right person shows up when you're least ready for them." The silence that followed was heavy with everything we weren't saying. That's when he said it again. "Don't tell Dad." Only this time, it wasn't about staying up late or hiding something trivial. His tone was serious, pleading almost. I frowned. "What are you hiding, Evan?" He hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "I got fired. From the firm in Chicago. I didn't tell him because he'd think I'm a failure. I've been staying here trying to figure out what comes next." I was silent for a moment. I could see the weight he was carrying, the fear of disappointing his father, the shame of not being perfect. I reached for his hand, and when he didn't pull away, I squeezed it gently. "You don't have to carry that alone," I said softly. He looked down at our hands, then back at me. "Why do you care so much?" "Because I know what it's like to feel like you're not enough." He didn't say anything, but in that moment, the air between us changed again. Gentle, charged, unsteady. We sat there for a long time, our hands still intertwined, the world quiet around us. I never did. Because some things the heart keeps just for itself.